Welcome back. I'm N.S. Lavanya, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KCS Kasinadar College of Arts and Science. In this video, you are going to learn the role of translation in 17th and 18th century, which is a part of Introduction to Translation Studies. The role of translation, how it emerged and underwent significant changes in the 17th century, is that we are going to learn. Susan Bassnett explains that the radical changes in the role of translation in the mid-17th century because of the conflict between absolute monarchy and the developing parliamentary system and the widening of the gap between traditional Christian humanism and science. Writers turned to ancient masters as role models for their work and saw in imitation as a mean of instruction to the audience. The translation of the classics increased considerably in France between 1625 and 1660. This was considered as the great age of French classicism and of the flowering of French theatre based on Aristotelian unities. French writers and theorists were enthusiastically translated into English. In Augustan England, art was perceived as the harmonious, ordering and elegant manner of nature, the inborn ability that transcended definition and prescribed. Sir John Denham covers both the formal aspect, that is art, and spirit nature of the work in his translation. This is well expressed in his poem to Sir Richard Fanshawe upon his translation of Pastor Fido and in his preface of The Destruction of Troy. Denham warns against applying literal translation of the translation of poetry as it will evaporate, but advises that TL form exists if new spirit coexist. He argues for a concept of translation that sees translator and original writer as equals, but operate in different way. He explains the duty of the translator is to extract from the SL what he perceives as the essential core of the work. Abraham Cowley, in his preface to his Pindaric Odes, boldly asserts that he has taken, left out and added what he pleased. Tia Steiner notes that Cowley's preface was taken as the manifesto of the libertine translators of the later 17th century. Dryden, in his preface to Ovid's epistles, tackled the problems of translation by formulating three basic principles: metaphrase, paraphrase and imitation. Dryden argues that to translate poetry, he must be a poet, he must be a master of both languages and must understand both the characteristics. In his dedication of the Aeneas, Dryden followed the path of moderation and steered between the two extremes of paraphrase and literal translation. Alexander Pope closely followed Dryden and stressed on close reading of the original to note the details of the style and manner while attempting to keep them alive. The right of the individual to be addressed in his own terms is an important element in the 18th century translation. The role of translation in the 18th century. In this century, writers produced large-scale rewritings of earlier texts to fit them to contemporary readers, maintaining standards of language and taste. Dr. Johnson, the famous critic, in his Life of Pope, discussed the question of addition to a text through translation, and also comments that if elegance is gained, it is surely desirable, provided nothing is taken away, and states that purpose of a writer is to be read. He asserts the fact that Alexander Pope wrote for his own time and for his own nation. That predicts the concept of 18th century. Hence, Susan clearly states that writers started writing texts which revealed their individuality through translation. This approach is well explained in Chapman's version of Eliot, where Andromache comes across as a warrior in her own right, whereas in Pope's version, Andromache suffers and despairs. Similarly, Pope presented godlike Hector, contrast with Chapman's degradation of this hero. The 18th century concept clearly delineated the role of translator as painter or imitator, with a moral duty both to his original subject and to the audience. Goethe argued that every literature must pass through three phases of translation, although everything occurs in the same language. The first phase makes us acquaint with foreign countries on our own terms. Example, Luther's German Bible. The second phase, the translator absorbs the sense of a foreign work but reproduces it in his own terms. Example, the French tradition of translating. In the third phase, which is his favorite, aims for perfect identity between SL and TL. This is the perfectly translated work of Homer. Goethe argued that translator must strive to meet both the new concept of originality together with a vision of universal deep structures. Towards the end of the 18th century, in 1791, Alexander Fraser Tytler published a volume, The Principles of Translation, the first systematic study in theory. He sets up three basic principles. The translation should give a complete transcript of the idea of the original work. Second, the style and manner of writing should be of the same character with that of the original. Third one, the translation should have all the ease of the original composition. Hence, translation theory from Dryden to Tytler is concerned with the problem of recreating an essential spirit, soul or nature of the work of art. Thanks for watching this video. We meet again in the next video.